So we're about to see Microsoft either fully take over what Xbox once was or not. The biggest acquisition in gaming history closed just over a year ago now, and whether you're a fan of Call of Duty or not doesn't matter because the launch of Black Ops 6 is here, and it carries a lot of stakes to it. A lot of things have happened the past year, like studio closures, thousands of layoffs, and drastic changes from what Xbox used to kind of do. And now, what'll happen if Black Ops 6 does or doesn't do well? What does that even mean for things to do well after like what happened to Hi-Fi Rush? And how has Xbox changed leading up to this? And the past few years, I've been a videographer that likes to work out and watch anime, but I especially like to follow Xbox and talk about Xbox as well as gaming in general. And at the end of the day, I do that because I want competition, quality, and to keep indulging in Game Pass personally. But how has Xbox changed since this deal closed in October of 2023? And look, shortly after it closed, we experienced probably I think at least, fact check me maybe, the most amount of layoffs from any gaming company out there, period, unless the company itself just shut down or something like that. Like Microsoft Gaming has laid off thousands of employees since this acquisition venture began. And then after it closed, it still continued because they kind of had to consolidate whatever and figure out how to make this work, basically doubling their staff. And we've had even business meetings to affirm to the audience, hey, this is what's happening. Like the talk about just, look, we're hearing things about multi-platform games happening. Are you going to do that? Are you going to put Halo on PlayStation and Nintendo? And they had to have a business meeting to talk to fans. And we even got financial reports showing that if it wasn't for Activision Blizzard becoming part of Xbox, they actually would have been down in revenue this year. And like this whole Activision Blizzard King acquisition and joining to Xbox has been so different than how Bethesda went. Bethesda just seemed to close in a matter of months. Everything got added to Game Pass. They just kind of became the other half of what Xbox was. But now with this closing and Black Ops 6, the series that all the court hearings were all about, that's all PlayStation would talk about, is Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty. This is the moment that all they would talk about is COD, not Diablo, not World of Warcraft, just Call of Duty. And that's fair because Call of Duty is in the top 10 most sold games every year. And that's why it's talked about. So after this Black Ops 6 launch, who's going to emerge? Xbox or Microsoft Gaming? If, say, this game, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, does well, which whatever the heck that means. Hi-Fi Rush did well, according to Aaron Greenberg, the main, marketing director, which I'm sure everybody quotes. But, it's successful in every metric we know. And then the studio gets closed. And there's other projects, even from Blizzard themselves, that got closed before happening. It's just, there's a lot of things that we don't know what exactly is doing well for Xbox, but let's just say it does. It's still one of the most sold games of the year, even though it's going to be on Game Pass. I would say if it doesn't raise Game Pass numbers by at least 15%, like the subs for Game Pass don't go up by 15% or more, that could be worrisome to Xbox. Because that's what Starfield did. Like Starfield, we don't know, but that was the highest raise. It's the only thing we can compare to Black Ops 6, which apparently that was like the highest amount of new subs that Xbox ever had in a single day. And that was assumably maybe around like 10 to 15%. So if Call of Duty doesn't do better than that, then that's going to turn a lot of eyes. So if it does well and it sells like crazy on PlayStation, for instance, alongside raising a lot of numbers on Game Pass, because this is the first Call of Duty game. In fact, first Activision Blizzard King game, period, that's launching day one on Game Pass. I would assume we will still get day ones on Game Pass Ultimate. But the multi-plat stuff is still going to continue. And the Call of Duty machine is still going to continue too. I really want those studios freed up that are at Activision. I'm glad Toys for Bob is independent now and not having to be part of that machine. But I just don't see how Microsoft would be okay letting that money machine go. But there's going to be more on that in a moment of what I would ideally like to see. And, Satya has a statement on exclusives, for instance. Satya Nadella, who's, the CEO of Microsoft, he said in the court hearings, if I could have my way, just exclusives wouldn't be a thing. We do have to have exclusives to be competitive, but I would like that not to be the way that we're competitive. And that's how Call of Duty could be ushering in that era. But the other thing that we've been seeing is like a slow output of Activision Blizzard games coming to Game Pass. Again, compared to Bethesda, they're on within weeks. Activision Blizzard, they're adding like one every month as of August, basically. So I've still enjoyed Game Pass, even though I haven't been getting those games. And if you've been enjoying this video, I'm on the road to 40K. I've been there for years. So I hope if you come by the channel or enjoying this, subscribe if you want to keep speculating. And I'm really here to get your thoughts on this subject and so many others. But what if Black Ops 6 doesn't go well? Let's say it doesn't review well. It doesn't really boost Game Pass numbers. Maybe the Game Pass numbers just kind of stay the same, but Call of Duty doesn't sell well. That is going to create even more confusion at Xbox, which there's already so much confusion there, apparently. Jason Schreier is an insider that a reporter, journalist, whatever you want to say. He does such a good job of talking to so many people, confirming his sources, getting multiple opinions that line up. And he said on a podcast that it's kind of just a mess at Xbox right now. They don't know what direction they want to do. They're all debating with each other. He said that, and I would imagine that. It's like ever since this Activision Blizzard thing closed, that's what it's kind of felt like. We don't know what the firm direction is for Xbox. And it sounds like whether Call of Duty Black Ops 6 does not do well, it doesn't boost Game Pass numbers, doesn't sell well, and so on and so forth, it sounds like that, confusion will still continue, or they'll just abandon it entirely and say, hey, let's just go entirely third party. If it does do well, Game Pass can still continue. We'll still get day ones. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe Call of Duty can be like an every other year thing, because that's the next step of this. What do we personally want Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to do in general? Sean Layden, the former boss of PlayStation, had some really good messaging, which is just a lot of things, essentially. But something he did say is that the AA project is really dying off. It almost feels like indie games or AAA games are the only way to do games now. And with Xbox's recent direction of, getting rid of the Hi-Fi Rush developers, cutting off certain studios, even smaller mobile studios to hit that market, and focusing on their bigger name IPs or whatever, it seems like that's a direction Xbox could go if even Call of Duty is successful. And that's something that does scare me, because I think it'd be great if Call of Duty was a biannual release. I think that's something that even COD fans, I've talked to a few COD fans, and they say the same thing. Like, I want them to cook. I want them to release a game every other year instead of every year, because it just makes a better game. And if Game Pass turns out, it kind of becomes a bigger conversation about Xbox that I won't go down the rabbit hole too much of here. But even if the biggest benefit to being an Xbox user, I'm going to phrase it like that, user, is just Game Pass, I'm cool with that. But I could see a lot of people disagreeing, and that exclusives should be the number one benefit. But I just care about playing great games and being able to get those games as easily as possible. But the Activision influence on Xbox has been so strong the past year, and depending on how this release goes for Black Ops 6 could really make that influence even stronger, potentially. Because, it'll be a moment that somebody says, I told you so. Whether it's Xbox and Activision, or even you watching, or people you talk to on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. How is this going to impact stuff like Halo and Gears of War as very strong, like, identifiable Xbox IP. What does this mean for multi-plat releases? Is Call of Duty going to stay the machine it is? There's a lot of questions that, you know, what evidence do we have as to what direction this could lead Xbox? I have gathered a few ideas and quotes and just plans that could be Xbox's idea of what the next Call of Duty will be, what the next console will be, and what their launch lineup will be for that console in 2026. And you go to that video, you could find that info here. But let me know what you think. Like, is this finally the moment that everything has been building up to, or does it just not matter?